people are missing some very heroic stories. Arlene Bankert joins us, ABC News what?
Adrian Bankert.
Adrian Bankert. I apologize, Adrian. ABC News correspondent down in Parkland, Florida. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning to you. Thanks for having me.
You found an incredible story of a teacher who turned out to be a major hero. What happened?
Well, Stacey Lippel was 20 feet from the shooter. When the shooting happened, she describes what he was wearing. She, at first, was kind of disoriented because they had a fire drill earlier in the morning. We'd heard that story, and then they heard the fire alarm go off again. So protocol says to leave the class, to evacuate. But once she started hearing gunshots, first it was foreign to her. And then she recognized the danger when she started hearing screams in the hallway. When she made contact, or in terms of seeing that shooter just 20 feet away, she started bringing kids into her classroom, just grabbing them, telling them to get in. She was able to pull the door closed and thankfully lock the door. Then she huddled in a pile with her children, with her classmates, those students, and protected them with her body. She did receive a gunshot wound to the arm. She was grazed by a bullet, but remarkably, none of the students were injured at all in her class, and it's just a testament to the strength and resilience and the quick thinking of this particular teacher.
Now, other teachers tried to do the same thing, right?
Yes, and it was interesting. She talked about Scott Beagle, who was laid to rest, I believe, this Sunday. There's been so many funerals, just keeping track of 17 funerals over the past 6 days. But she said that she saw her teacher, her neighbor, she called him, in the neighboring classroom, and she told him to lock his door. And he was doing the same thing she was doing. He was trying to get students to rush into the class, to duck and cover, to save them. And at one point, she said he turned his head and couldn't see the shooter. She had a clear line of sight to him, and Mr. Beagle did not. And she got inside the classroom. She had locked the doors. Hours later, she came out and she saw his body laying on the ground. Mm. And at the time, she did not understand why and what was going on and was he okay. But it was moments later that she found out that he had passed.
So you said hours later, so they stayed in the locked classroom for hours?
Yes, it was interesting. She has been taught, they have active shooter drills. She was taught that even if you hear somebody shouting outside, police, police, you don't open the door. And her thinking was, because this young man had attended the school before, he knew the protocol. He knew what the teachers and the students were taught about how to respond to a situation like this. She heard screams in the hallway of students and didn't open the door. She heard the SWAT teams when they arrived, and she did not open the door. Finally, they busted in to get them out safely, but her thinking was, it sounds cruel in a moment. You might overhear it and think, oh, that sounds terrible. Why wouldn't you open the door? But she thought, what if this shooter had, and again, this is, still the alleged shooter, Nicholas Cruz. What if he was pretending and he was saying police, police, or he was screaming, and she couldn't afford to put any of her other students at risk.
So when you interviewed her, she told you that she was in this locked room. How many kids did she have in the room with her?
She doesn't even know. She didn't even know if all of the students were her students for her creative writing class. It was Valentine's Day. They were writing love letters and playing music and having kind of that party atmosphere that we've all experienced when we've been in school. And that's when that fire drill went off and the bullets went off. And at the time, when all of this was going on and there were students screaming and running for their lives, because some of the students that were in her class had already walked out. They were halfway out the building because fire drill, okay, another
Right.
fire drill.
Right.
So they were evacuating. But there were students just coming from other classes that were looking for safety. And she talked about one young lady who was actually clinging to the inside of a cabinet, like trying to hide behind the doors where, there's shelves that she's just holding on. And she talked about squeezing her children, making eye contact with them. I say her children. She treated these young people, these students, like they were her own. She had two twins, actually, two of her own natural children who were on campus, but all the way across from her, and she knew that they were safe. But sadly, she lost two of her students, Joaquin being one of them, who called her mom. And she broke down in tears when talking about them, that these were like her own children. And to see their bodies laying in the hallway and the carnage was just unreal.
Just so I understand this right, she was in the room, locked the door with her students to try and keep them as safe as possible. And for hours, or for at least at some point during that time, she heard screams of help from other students and made that instant decision, if I open the door, I might be doing damage to the kids in this room.
Correct.
Wow.
She didn't know if it was a ploy for this shooter to get them to come out, because he, and it's been, confirmed through law enforcement, was shooting in different classrooms. And in the neighboring classroom where Scott Beagle taught, he fired into that room. And she said it was just a barrage of bullets.
Wow.
And it's amazing.
Adrian, you interviewed this woman. Do you have people want to see and hear the interview? Is it up online?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it aired this morning on Good Morning America in the Eastern Time Zone around 7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So it'll air within a few minutes, actually, in your time zone, I believe, and then on the West Coast.
And then it'll be up online at some point, so you can go and see it. Adrian,
it's on Twitter. Yeah, it's on Twitter. You can see it now. It's on our app.
Adrian Bankert, ABC News correspondent in Parkland, Florida, with an unbelievable story of a very heroic teacher, and there but for the grace of God go any of us. Adrian, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
727 KTRS.